It is a first down. Pirates.
You can paint this one purple. What an incredible win by the ECU Pirates.
Welcome into Blackbeard's Alley, our Pirate football podcast. We really appreciate everyone tuning in. It is New Year's Eve. We're wrapping up the East Carolina football season, and what a thrilling win it was for the Pirates on Saturday afternoon up at Annapolis, Maryland in the Military Bowl. So now we're going to take a look back at things and then obviously take a look at the big picture, the coaching staff, the transfer portal, a lot headed your way in the next 35 to 40 minutes. But without any further ado, let me welcome in my co-host, Jason Tyndall. Jason, how are you?
I'm doing good, Bubba. Thanks, man. Happy early New Year to Pirate Nation and to you and your family as well. And like you said, what a thrilling victory over Pitt this past week in Annapolis. That's fantastic. Fantastic job by the Pirates.
Yeah, it definitely was. And like I mentioned, this is our final episode of the year, of course, with it being New Year's Eve. And we hope, as you mentioned, everyone out there in Pirate Nation had an excellent Christmas season. And we wish you nothing but the best in 2026. But taking a look back at the 2025 Pirate football season, it was definitely a very memorable one. Going into the year, we were very intrigued to see how things would play out in a full season under Coach Harrell and staff. And we had to love what we saw. 9-4, the program's best record since 2013 when we went 10-3 under Coach Ruff. It's just the third time this century that we've won 9 games, and the other, or fourth time I should say, the other 3, 8-4 in 2000, 10-3, and then excuse me, I'm all tongue-tied here, but the fourth time winning 9, and then the third time that we've lost less than 5 since 2000.
Yeah, great year. Of course, the one head scratcher really was UTSA when you look back on the season and the first half against NC State. But if you really want to peel the onion back, we made a run at NC State. We just didn't really have a chance to make a run at UTSA with those turnovers. But Coach Harrell and his staff, this has been talked about across Pirate Nation regularly. They deserve nothing but kudos. And then, kudos to the coaches who are already moving on, Freeman and Roberts, who stayed and coached with vigor, it sounds like, as far as helping the Pirates get that victory over Pitt. So I'm sure it's satisfying for them. But great year, a lot of momentum. Hopefully we can grab that momentum and, create another source of fundraising with the Pirate Club and get a little more creative with how we're trying to raise money to stay in touch with the landscape of college football.
Yeah, the Pirates 14-5 under Coach Harrell under the last season and a half. And it was something I was thinking about on the way to the Outer Banks on Sunday, going to meet my family. I was really hoping that on Monday that we would receive an email and communication from the administration, and we did that. Kudos to them, John Gilbert and his staff, for being very proactive and capitalizing on this momentum, as you just said. And there's a lot of tremendous things happening right now with East Carolina football. So when you're hiring new coaches and bringing new players into the program, it's we have so much to sell.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I'm sure we'll get into this more, but just the style of offense we're going to be playing. And, it's actually, if you look at JDB and what we're bringing in and Coach Davis, it's got to be attractive for receivers and skill players up front. And that's, I've always said that ECU tends to thrive when we do, have that high powered, what I call fireworks offense. So, and the momentum of this season and momentum of what Coach Harrell's done. And this does not fool ourselves either. He's already starting to get some national accolades and chatter in the national media as far as the up and coming candidate for next year. So we need to need to have a big year. We need to make sure we take care of him and his staff. Nothing helps more than that than just getting some more W's in 2026.
Before we talk about the staff and then where the Pirates lie in regards to that 2026 roster, we'll keep the main thing. The main thing, as Coach Harrell said numerous times before and after the game against Pitt, and the Pirates certainly did that. And going into the game, Jason, you and I were talking off the air just a few minutes ago about the recipe that it was going to require to defeat Pitt, a very good football team, 8-4, one of, I think, 5 teams in the ACC that finished in a 5-way tie for second at 6-2, and they had blown a 17-point lead at home to Louisville. Otherwise, they'd have been playing UVA for the conference championship in Charlotte. But you knew it was going to take a supreme defensive effort. We got that. The Pirates allowed just 10 points defensively because you obviously had the scoop and score there in the third quarter for the other touchdown for the Panthers. And offensively, you had to take care of the football. You had to be opportunistic. You had to get short fields via those turnovers and special teams, and pretty much everything that we needed, those explosion plays and everything else that I just listed off came to fruition.
Yeah, that menu or recipe, as you call it, is exactly how you beat a team that typically on paper looks like they're more talented, and you maybe have had a little more rigorous schedule, which I don't know is necessarily the case. But you win the turnover battle. You don't make stupid mistakes in the kicking game. You create pressures. You run the football enough just to kind of keep the clock in the right situations, and don't have any stupid bonehead mistakes just in general as far as penalties and things like that and turnovers. And, to me, there's a post by Lance Ware, who's on staff, as you know, after the game, reflecting on the trip to Annapolis. He says, this game proves that culture and effort can win in college football. And I think that sums up what happened on this past week when during the Military Bowl. It looked like it mattered more to our players, and we were just relentless on defense. And, and Anthony Smith just doing such a good job, and Marlon Gunn. So it's fun to watch, obviously.
Yep. Well said by Coach Ware in that post. And you looked at Pitt offensively. They were a big play offense, especially since Mason Heichel had taken over there at the beginning of October, and he had started the last 8 games. That 35 points per game, ranked top 15, top 20 nationally. And the Pirates, to limit them to 10 points, that just gives you an idea of the feat that ECU accomplished. 5 turnovers. And one of the things that Pitt had struggled with, despite having those 35-plus points per game, was protecting Mason Heichel. The freshman quarterback had been sacked 30 times, and then going back to when Eli Holstein had been their quarterback, he had been sacked 10 times in their first 4 games. So that really stood out to me going into this one, that they had surrendered 40 sacks. And you saw why in this game. The Pirates had pressure on him all day, sacking him 4 times, and then generating I don't know what the final stat said, but it seemed like 10 to 15 more pressures.
Yeah. That was when I'm looking at what happened, and probably something that if you don't really pay attention to it, which most of the Pirate fans do, but our defensive front and our linebackers and our edge guys were just relentless all day. And like you said, making it more difficult for the freshman quarterback to, go through his progressions, et cetera, which surprises me a little bit, because if you look at the opt-outs that were high-impact opt-outs compared to who Pitt had opt-out, they look like they had an upper hand across the board. And that's what makes this game even more special, in my opinion, because we weren't even playing, at our full deck of cards, and we still were able to get a win against a really, really good Pitt football team. But pressures have been a problem for them all year, and we took advantage of that.
That pressure started from the jump, getting after Mason Heichel. And the Pirates offensively didn't do a ton, but they took care of the football for the most part. Did have a miscue in There was another time where Pitt dropped an interception down around the goal line that was at a really critical juncture in the game where we didn't have a receiver get his head around. But on the whole, and the offense did what they needed. You knew you're going to have some of those big plays. In the second half, we're able to get just that. But in the first half, I think our first 5 possessions, we were inside the Pitt 35-yard line every single time, and unfortunately only came away with 3 points.
Right, and the group I was watching with the game, we were saying that most of the times when that happens, you've already dug yourself in kind of that momentum hole, and it can create some doubt. Getting the ball down there inside the 35, those multiple times in a row and coming away with nothing, that was tough. But we overcame it, and it's just the resiliency of the football of our program and Coach Harrell and the staff and the players themselves and the buy-in. So, frustrating, but just the most important stat of the day is that scoreboard at the end of the game, right?
Yep, and to our offense's credit, and the defense for that matter, that was some of the adversity in the game, as far as having those opportunities and then not capitalizing on them. But the defense continued to play and continued to provide them, and we took advantage as the game went along in the second half. But a few final thoughts there in the first half. The defense just played outstanding. Unfortunately, Pitt was able to put together a 2-minute drive, and Coach Harrell blamed himself, as you would expect him to in the post game, or actually maybe on Inside Pirate Athletics with Brian Bailey, and just saying that he zeroed out there, went cover zero man coverage, and Mason Heinchel, when we did get pressure on him, he threw the ball, if you go back and watch, very early, and then a terrific play by the Pitt wide receiver, Poppy Williams.
Yeah, that was just a great play by Pitt in general. I believe Coach is right. When you do zero out, if you don't get there, you're putting your deep half players in compromising position. So you're counting on that pressure to take care of that, and that happens though in college football now. As much as people throw the football, it's tough to stop it, and it's tough to sit back too. So I'm at least we were being aggressive and going after the quarterback as opposed to letting them sit back there and just go through his 1, 2, 3 progressions and pick us apart in a zone situation.
Yeah, they had the ball just outside of our red zone, and Coach Harrell's thinking was, of course, they had a very solid kicker, so he was trying to make that field goal as long as possible, and just didn't work out there. But to start the second half, Pitt had a bit of a drive going. We forced a turnover, and then you had the big pass play where we had favorable field position. And when that's the case, I'm a big proponent of taking a deep shot or using one of those so-called gadget plays. And we did just that. We took advantage of their coverage with Anthony Smith on a deep ball there, and it was an easy 6.
Yeah, great throw and catch. That's all I can say about that. And it's just the timing was just right. We're going to miss Anthony Smith, that's for sure. And over the last 2 seasons, speaking of Anthony Smith, let's give him a lot of props for what he's done. Well over 100 receptions, maybe 105, 110 receptions for I think this year he finished a little over 1,000. Last year I think he was maybe 700 or so. So just an unbelievable 2-year Pirate career for the NC State transfer. Yeah, I've got a lot of buddies of mine in the neighborhood who are NC State fans, and I give them a hard time all the time, and they just agree. They're like, gosh, how did we miss this when he was at NC State? Well, how does this happen? Because not only did he light them up a little bit, but he also, they watch a lot of the games as well and just keep up with them. And, that was a great addition to the team. It seems like too, he's just a great program addition as well with the culture and everything they were trying to, Coach Harrell was making sure we, fortify ourselves with. Yeah, that's one of those, you didn't know exactly what you were getting, but you saw a guy that had legit 10-3, 100-meter speed. And as you said, I can only imagine how those State fans felt seeing numbers like that produced by Anthony Smith, wondering why that could not have happened in the red and white. But
Needless to say, we're very glad it did in the purple and gold because it played a very key role in those 14 victories under Blake Carroll over the last season and a half. But kind of going along there in the third quarter, that was a very critical juncture. The Pirates had taken that 10-7 lead. You get the ball, and then you're facing a 4th and 1 at your own 32. We opt to go for it. We use a unbalanced set into the boundary there, toss the ball to Marlon Gunn. What would have been the most memorable run of Marlon Gunn's career, unfortunately, was brought back in a delayed fashion because of an inadvertent whistle. I was absolutely losing my mind on the sideline, did my best to conceal it, under those circumstances since I was not in the stands, and fortunate enough to be down there, but that was hard to hide my true feelings.
See, I've got a question for you, Bubba. Did you hear the whistle?
I did not. I think going back and watching the replay, it was very faint, but I think I did hear it. And Coach Harrell, I'll take him at his word. He said in the postgame that official that blew it was right beside him. He said he felt, as you can imagine, absolutely awful about it. That didn't do us any good. And then I'm sure that official felt even worse when you had a holding call and then the scoop and score by the young man from Pitt.
Yeah.
And what a game! What a game! Biles had, I think, something like 15 tackles and 4 or 5 for losses, and he's just a remarkable player, potentially the best player we'd seen all season on the defensive side of the ball.
Right, and the problem we have with that is East Carolina. We've got tattoos and warts from many years of questionable calls and things. I never could hear it. I didn't go back enough on the replay and spend a lot of time trying to figure out if there was a whistle, but you could not hear it on TV. And there's a lot of innuendo and rumors about like what's the rule with that, et cetera. All I can say is I had an out of body come to Jesus moment there for about a minute after that call, and I was thinking, here we go. They're gonna we're gonna get the short end of the stick here. And this game's going to change, and it did change immediately. And obviously, I know you're going to transition to this, but then our response was something that just said, I said, okay, this culture is different. This is different under Coach Harrell. These guys fight more. So I'll take it from there, Bubba.
Yeah, it was, as a few Pirate fans and myself were talking in the last few days, and just an elite response. And that's definitely not embellishing. Because you looked at a very low-scoring game, a game where points were beyond at a premium, and it was going to be a 17-7 ECU lead with 5 minutes in the third quarter, and instead, 2 plays later, we're trailing by 4 points instead of up 10. And then, to our credit, 2 plays later, we're back up 17-14 when he hit that slant or glance route to Anthony Smith, and what a run after the catch. 72 yards later, we would regain the lead.
Yeah, and it's funny we're talking about Anthony again, but not funny, but it's not ironic either. It's just the way it is. When we were coaching, we always said there are certain players, we call them pep band or marching band players. And what I mean by that is when the ball got into their hands in the open field, your band better start playing the fight song already, because they're going to probably score, and they're hard and he is so slippery and so fast. But if you watch that replay, if you see the hustle of his teammates getting downfield too and creating those little, what I call drift blocks, which kind of get in the way of the pursuit, but he just flat out jukes a couple of guys as well and just runs away from them. What a play though. That was another out of body experience for me too, because that response was just, like you said, elite. Just case we're going to keep scrapping. Yeah,
there was one of those guys running along there, one of Anthony Smith's fellow receivers, and I heard Stephen Igo in the post game. He's like, block the guy, stop celebrating. It was pretty funny, but fortunately it worked out for us. And then right after that, we're able to force another turnover, kick a field goal, Nick Mazzy after missing the 51-yarder early, where you can tell, you know, I'm sure it was like kicking a brick under those conditions, but he bounced back, came up big after that. And then the theme continued with us forcing turnovers. Pitt got some drives going, but then we came up big. KJ Merrill had what was a 70-yard interception, and Coach Harrell was joking, saying that if his 100-meter speed was what he said it is, then he would have scored. But nonetheless, a huge play by KJ. And then normally we would have been more aggressive there, but you get in a 3rd and long situation down there in the red zone, already up 6. And to Coach Harrell's credit, he did the smart thing and played it close to the vest and conservative, and we're able to put it through to go up 2 scores there in the final half of the 4th quarter.
Right. Yeah. The smart does the best, a great coaching decision by him, and just, not doing things stupid to create a silly turnover, another one of those, fumble, scoop and scores, et cetera, that gives them momentum, puts them right back in the game. And you saw a lot of that happening in bowl games. Coaches would, what I call misuse the, your card that says, hey, here's a scenario we're in, here's what we do, and go for the 3 points. Yeah.
Appreciate Kenny Curlings and others chiming in via YouTube. We'll get to those comments in a moment. But I appreciate you watching and chiming in here on New Year's Eve. A little bit of a brunch edition of the show. But some final thoughts on this one. That final drive, or next to the last drive for Pitt, I should say. Yes, they ended up getting points, but in a way, it was almost a death drive for themselves. 14 plays, 72 yards, but it took over 5 minutes, and the Pirates came up big down there inside the 10-yard line and forced them to kick that chip shot field goal from, I guess, 20 or just beyond 20 yards. And that really helped the cause, even though they got points, because it exhausted so much time.
Yep, exactly. And that's been a theme for our defense all year. And one of the aspects about that, it goes back to Bubba. We tend to make people work for yards. It's not something that typically comes easy. And it's almost like we're running the football at the same time, because the clock just keeps ticking. And now they're just pressing. And you start doing unnatural things too as a play caller when that's the case, because you realize that you might not get another shot at this thing. So, again, hats off to the defense.
But the theme of the day was just the defensive effort, and then overcoming adversity, that elite response, and that 2-minute or so lapse of time there in the 3rd quarter, which seemed like an eternity, because you had explosion plays for touchdowns being called back, scoop and score on the Pitt side. It was absurd 2 or 3 minutes there. And honestly, without going back and looking at it, it may have not been more. It may not even been that long.
Yeah, it's like a time warp. And I hate to even bring this up, but there's so many things like on Instagram about that, with people from the national college football pundits who were just talking about how they just felt like it was the ultimate screw job happening in front of everybody on TV. And it's just no other way to put it. And it hats off again that we came back and just stuck with what we do. And the main thing is the main thing, to quote you and Coach Harrell. So just got the win.
Along those lines, that's why I had an Ohio U alum, diehard Bobcats fan, that a guy that I'd met shortly after college about 20 years ago, had written some articles for him. Probably haven't talked to him in 10 years or more. He texted me. I couldn't believe it. I see Luke Jernigan on my phone, and he said, dude, he said, in all my years of watching college football, I don't think I've ever seen a bigger screw job than what just happened to you guys. I hope you guys can overcome it and pull out the win. And fortunately, we did.
That's awesome. I was walking to the gym yesterday and I had an ECU sweatshirt on, and this guy walks up to me. He's a Florida Gators fan. He said the exact same thing. He goes, "I could not believe what I'm looking at here. It's almost like he said it almost felt like the refs had money on the game or something. It's just such a weird series of events there in those 3 or 4 plays. But then you hit the marching band guy, hit Anthony Smith on that glance route and get him out in the open field, and here we go. Pirates were right back in this thing and chugging along. So it just feels good to be on this side of the fence after that game for sure, because I can tell you that there's a lot of upset Pitt fans around.
After Mason Heinchel got tackled on that final play, it became a scene much like it was last December when the Pirates beat the Wolfpack, as fans rushed the field, and it was kind of a slow rush, but it was a moment that warranted it, in my opinion. Given the magnitude of the win, not only did we beat a quality football team, but under the circumstances which we did it, it definitely made sense in my mind for some of the Pirate fans there, which, if I had to guess, were probably somewhere between 7,000 and 8,000. Not as many as a year ago, but not a bad showing at all. And they were into the game from the opening kick, or really before the opening kick. And kudos to Pirate Nation for showing up and showing out in Annapolis. But kind of with this last 10 minutes or so that we have, Jason, let's transition to the big picture. And let's start with the coaching staff changes. And one of those staff changes was, of course, John David Baker, our offensive coordinator, going to Ole Miss. And we won't spend a lot of time on this one because it's old news at this point, a couple weeks old. But since it's the first time you've been on the show with me since it happened, let's talk about that Jordan Davis hire coming over from North Texas. This year, the Mean Green led the nation in total yards and points per game, 44.8 points and 504 yards. Your thoughts on that hire?
I think it's a slam dunk hire as offensive coordinator, and just the system that he's in. And not to be repetitive, but I just feel like this is the type of offense that does 2 things. It helps keep us marketable in this transactional world of portal and transfer windows, and NIL, et cetera. But number 2, it excites ECU fans because let's face it, sometimes we get down, we get behind in games, and we always with a coordinator who's going to be aggressive and runs a scheme that has been known to light up the scoreboard like a 4th of July at Wrightsville Beach. You don't really ever feel like you're dead in the water in a game. You feel like you can all of a sudden hit a couple big plays and put people in space and make the defensive coordinator and the other team's defense tackle an athlete in space. So excited about his hire, him being the guy, and excited about the staff I believe he's going to put together. It sounds like Coach Maddox might stick around as O-line coach, which creates some continuity. I know our tight ends coach right now is still on staff, so that's good. But I couldn't be more excited about Coach Davis being the new OC.
Yeah, John David Baker had roots to the air raid, but not as strong as those roots of Jordan Davis. And some people, I definitely think that there'll be some differences there, but at the same time, have no doubt that there'll be a commitment to running the football. North Texas was very respectable in that regard. They ran it for over 180 yards per game this year, which ranked 41st nationally. This is not the Mike Leach air raid. It has evolved, and there was a much greater emphasis on running the football for the Mean Green than there had been for the Red Raiders or other people that where Mike Leach had coached. And this year they had Caleb Hawkins, top 15 rusher nationally, that had right around 1,300 yards. So very excited about this hire and to see where things go. Coach Davis has been given autonomy when it comes to hiring his offensive staff. You've had Darrell Roberts move on to Wake Forest, and then Rodney Freeman to Duke. I think you referenced that earlier. Then Juan Soto, who Coach Davis had worked with the last 2 years there in Denton, Texas at UNT. Juan, he's been in coaching now for close to a decade and had been several different places: Yale, Saginaw Valley State, Kent State as a GA, and he has been hired to coach the receivers. Now the question becomes, will we have two receivers coaches like we did under Coach Ruff? Because, of course, over the last couple seasons, you've had Hunter McKay, who came with John David Baker from Ole Miss.
I bet it looks similar to what was like here with Ruff and Link and the guys, as far as how they structure their staff, because the tight ends coach can also, the Y position, the air raid, you can run any combination of the air raid basic concepts and just tag it a different way, where now the tight end might be running the deep dig, or might be running the drag, or might be running the shallow cross, as opposed to one of the inside or outside receivers with motion, et cetera. So it's not as difficult or as crazy as some of our fans might think. But I think if Coach McKay stays on board, he'll be heavily involved in the passing game, but also making sure we were always shored up in the run game, as you mentioned, as the air raid concepts have evolved. And I ran the air raid my last 2 years as a coach, and one year we had the talent to do it, enough players, and the other year we got banged up, but we didn't. But what it did for us was it allowed us to run football on people because of the spacing of it. And now in college, they're even extending the splits of the outside receivers almost on the sideline. So now you're covering all 52 yards across the field at all times, and then you've got the ability at any point to go deep. So super excited about the hire. I'm glad he's bringing his receivers guy with him, because he'll know the structure and how things should look in practice immediately. That'll help start teaching people, getting people coached up. But more importantly, let's go get some receivers in the portal based on what's going on and what Coach Davis brings.
Shifting over to the defensive side, I mean, you had Jordan Hankins. Hankins had spent the last at least 2 seasons with Memphis, and then he and Roy Tesh are going to be co-defensive coordinators. Memphis, very respectable on defense, averaging, giving up 23, 24 points per game over the last 2 years, have been among the nation's best, forcing turnovers. I really like these moves. And Coach Tesh, as we've talked multiple times on the show, very deserving. And then that performance that he and Coach Harrell and that defensive staff put forth up in Annapolis against arguably the best offense they had seen all season, and came through with their best defensive performance of the season. It was a no-brainer in my opinion.
Yeah, I took Coach Tesh as a dog. I mean, so I'm excited he gets that promotion. Helps him out a little bit financially as well, and rewards him for his commitment to Pirate Nation and to Coach Harrell and even Coach Houston before that, for their time together. I believe this is a great hire too. I know for a fact that he agreed to take Blake Harrell's structure and what they believe in and what has worked, and just add some wrinkles to it. So the tape next year will look a little bit differently, but they'll still be based on that structure that Harrell has. So excited about it. I think the hires we've had so far work well, and there shouldn't be a whole lot of change on defense. I think it's going to be more of what do we look like offensively compared to JDB's system. Yeah.
Now the question becomes, from an offensive staff standpoint, will Matt Maddox be back next year, or will the Pirates have a new offensive line coach? Stay tuned there. And then as far as the transfer portal is concerned, of course, you had those guys that had left prior to the bowl game: Caton Hauser, Yannick Smith, J.C. Connor, and London Montgomery since the bowl game. And I think technically before the game, Jamarian McCrimmon had opted to say that he was entering his name in the portal, even though he was going to be playing in the game. And then Emmanuel Poku following the bowl game, Parker Jenkins, and then some others, Jaron Waiters, and I know there's another one or two that I'm leaving out. But what are your thoughts, if anything, on those guys departing?
I mean, I have personal thoughts on it, but I also have the reality of the world we're in thoughts. it's such a transactional business now. Roster management is one of the most key components of your program. I do like that we have the 14-day window coming up. But let me back up to your question though before I go on a tangent. Some of them have been asked to leave, and there's probably multiple reasons why. But others are just testing their waters. It's almost like cool to go in the portal now and see if you can make a little more money. And the problem I have is if you look at the numbers that are out there and what's happening in college football is, some of these guys, you got to think Javonte's going to probably land somewhere. You think Caden's going to land somewhere. Yannick could land somewhere. But a lot of them might wind up not having a home when it's all said and done because there's just so many it's a fad. It's almost like, hey, when the Michael Jackson jackets came out in 1983, it was a fad to have a Michael Jackson jacket. Even though you didn't like it, you still got one because it was cool at school, right? And I think that's what's happening with the portal. And they've got these people in these players' ears and feeding them a bunch of shit, and they're not getting told honestly what's happening. And next thing you know, they're stuck without a place to go or a home. Some of them, a lot of them. But we lost some good players, but we'll get some guys out of the portal as well. I know Lance Ware and that staff's working their tail off to make sure we're ahead of the game there.
Yep, that other one that was escaping me was, of course, the Syrio Riles, another tight end. So the Pirates losing a lot of production from that tight end position. We'll see how much we utilize the tight end moving forward. But so I don't know if that played into those guys' thinking there. I'd have to go back and look at the North Texas offense. But just on the surface as it is, I think those are the ones that stand out the most to me just because of those guys were so versatile and could do so many things. But guys that have said that they were coming back, guys like running back DeJuan Lacey, who got hurt down at Coastal Carolina when he was playing very well, defensive back Aiden Duncanson, linebackers Kieran Davis and Jackson Barker, and offensive lineman, center Carson Jones, who got hurt back not long before the season, Bryce Weaver. And then on the defensive line, you got to love having a great start like this on the defensive line, Preston Carr, Ryan Roseborough. And then I got this directly from him on the field after the game. My dad went up and was talking to Xavier McIver, and he said I'll alter his statement a little bit here, but he said, I hope your big butt's back in purple and gold next fall. And Xavier started smiling. He said, yes, sir, it will be.
That's great news because I didn't know if he was going to come back or not, just based on what's happened after his knee surgery. So that's awesome to hear that. And again, the word culture, it means everything in today's world of college. I think it actually means more now than it ever has because of the transfer portal.
So a couple names to keep an eye on in the coming days: Brock Spalding, Jamarly Riddle. Riddle, unfortunately, suffered an injury. I believe it was of the ankle variety, but he was on crutches there going off the field just at halftime. And that was another thing that we failed to mention that the Pirates overcame, that adversity, losing one of your defensive leaders, if not the defensive leader there in Jamarly Riddle. But hopefully he will remain a Pirate and be back to health soon. And if so, then with him and Demarius Hines, who got injured back in preseason camp, the safety positions looking pretty good. But as we begin to wrap this up, Jason, any final thoughts? If not, I've got a few comments here from Kenny Curlings, and we'll get out of here.
Yeah, just obviously, Bubba, I enjoyed doing this year with you and participating. And I know my work schedule's gotten crazy with travel and everything. And just thank you for all the stuff you've done as far as getting this information out to Pirate Nation. And just excited about what's going to happen. Once January 2nd hits, it's Katie bar the door as far as the rosters go. And I'm just excited to see who we bring on board and who we keep retain. And as we get into winter conditioning and getting ready for spring football, whatever they want to call it now. It looks so different, but yeah, I'm excited for Pirate Nation and where we're heading as a program.
Yeah, no doubt. How can you not be? And 14-5 since Coach Harrell took over, winning 9 games for just the 4th time this century, and it's just been a remarkable run, and no reason to think we can't have it continue, despite some of the defections last year when some of those guys that moved on made that decision. People understandably, are fairly emotional about it, and like, well, what are we going to do? We're not going to be able to play any defense. We're going to give up 30-plus points per game, and what do? We produce one of the better defenses in recent memory, and you held, I think it was 6 of our opponents to 17 points or less, and you played your best game in your last game when you were at a disadvantage, when your offense couldn't help you but so much. You limit a 35-point per game Pitt offense to just 10. Remarkable performance by Blake Harrell, defensive coordinator now, Roy Tesh, and that entire defensive staff. Won't name everyone, but yeah, they are very deserving of everything coming their way. But that will do it for this 31st episode of Blackbeard's Alley. We appreciate everyone tuning in. Be sure to like, follow, comment, and subscribe. And Happy New Year to everyone, and we'll catch up with you sometime in the month of January. We'll have a podcast with some of the roster changes and other information. But be sure to join the Pirate Club and give what you can as your situation allows to the Rev Share situation. And we'll talk to you soon here on Blackbeard's Alley. As always, go Pirates.
Painted purple all night long in Eastern North Carolina.